Happy Monday, English 11. Mr. Johnson here again. We're coming to a close. We're bringing this thing to a close. We've finished all of the major assignments for this class, and we've only got a few days left. So I thought it would make sense, and Miss Arklin and I talked about it, and we agree that it's going to be good to kind of end how we started, with the contemporaries and with poetry. And so today I want to start on a really light note. We're going to get into some heavier stuff, some stuff with more meaning and more feeling and more relevancy, I would say, for the current times, just given what's happened in Minneapolis this weekend and this past week. And so we'll get into some of that, and we'll talk about some of the more controversial ways that poetry can help people express themselves. But we will also just kind of just start with something a little bit lighter and try to end on a happy note as well, as best we can, even though we're still sort of in the midst of this pandemic. We're in the midst of just some unrest and some feelings of anxiety and some feelings of just general strangeness and hurt and fear and whatever else people are feeling right now. So today we're going to start with something light, and we're going to start with Billy Collins. Billy Collins is one of the premier poets in the United States right now. So oftentimes I think when you think of poetry, you think, of someone who is not alive and not very relevant to you. And to some extent that might be true of Billy Collins as well. He's definitely alive, don't get me wrong, but he's old, right? So maybe to a 17-year-old he's less relevant, but I think he's still funny. And I think if you have especially if your humor kind of tends towards satire, tends towards irony, I think you will think he's a little bit funny, if I can explain it to you in a way that makes sense. Also, if you stick around to the end of the video, you will get to meet my dog, who is currently sleeping in my lap as I speak. And I have a poem about a dog written by Billy Collins that we'll end with. So I've got 3 poems for you today. I will read the poem to you, and then I will kind of talk about it, and I'll try to explain it as best I can. And your assignment for the day is the same as kind of we had in the first English 11A, like the first part of this class. And that is to just feel something and let the poetry make you feel something. And it's okay, whatever your reaction is. If you are offended by this poem, great. If you are if you think it's funny, great. If you think it's a little bit creepy, great. If you just have very little emotional reaction to it at all, just because it doesn't really resonate with you, I understand that as well. And so when you fill out the Google form today, that's what you'll have in mind, and I will ask you questions that hopefully kind of point in that direction. So to start us off, I have a poem by Billy Collins called "Oh My God." Oh my God. Not only in church and nightly by their bedsides do young girls pray these days. Wherever they go, prayer is woven into their talk, like a bright thread of awe. Even at the pedestrian mall, outbursts of praise spring unbidden from their glossy lips. Okay, so let's try to explain that poem. What does that poem mean? Billy Collins is writing here. Yes, there's kind of a double meaning. It's a little bit ironic, or maybe it's satire. But basically, what he's observing here is just something about human nature, something specifically about the nature of teenage girls, or young girls, as he calls them in this poem. And basically, he's also commenting on sort of the nature of America and how it's changing. So this ties into our notions of the American dream. Maybe it's a little bit of a criticism of popular culture, whatever. But basically, he's saying that back in the old days, we used to praise God. If you remember the very early part of this class, we're talking about the Puritans, right? They would have had a serious problem with young people just using the Lord's name in vain, which was a sin. Well, it's still a sin in many Christian religions today. So they would have had a serious problem with people just sort of using the name, the word God flippantly, just sort of about their daily lives. And yet now it's kind of commonplace. If you sort of are out and about, maybe you do this yourself, you will say, OMG, oh my God, right? And so what he's saying here is he's jokingly saying, not only in church do people pray these days, they pray all the time. They walk into a mall and they're like, oh my God, right? It's that voice that Valley Girl kind of speak. And again, with reactions to this, if that's you, if you've been in that situation, maybe you feel a little called out, maybe feel a little bit offended by that. I understand. That's fair. Maybe you're like, Billy Collins is 60 something probably when he wrote this. It's kind of creepy for an old dude to be like looking at young girls and like analyzing their behavior so that he can write poems about them. Weird, right? Fair enough. That's fair. Or you could recognize it for what it is. Maybe it makes you laugh because it's satire and it's not meant to be taken too seriously. So yeah, that's that first poem. Let me know what your reaction to that poem is if you have one. The next poem is called Golden Years, and this is going to be, I think, the least relatable of all to you, unless maybe you are a little bit dissatisfied with your suburban surroundings. I know Andover is pretty suburban, right? And maybe you've noticed, just as Billy Collins is in this poem, that the names of suburban neighborhoods don't always align with the actual reality of those places, and I'll explain more about that as soon as I read the poem. The Golden Years. All I do these drawn-out days is sit in my kitchen at Pheasant Ridge, where there are no pheasants to be seen, and last time I checked, no ridge. I could drive over to Quail Falls and spend the day there playing bridge, but the lack of a falls and the absence of quail would only remind me of Pheasant Ridge. I know a widow at Fox Run, and another with a condo at Smoky Ledge. One of them smokes, and neither can run, so I'll stick to the pledge I made to Midge. Who frightened the fox and bulldozed the ledge? I asked in my kitchen at Pheasant Ridge. So what he's doing there, and if you drive around your neighborhoods or just any of the suburbs, around the Twin Cities, you'll notice this phenomenon, right? The names are often natural, like they're born of something natural. Even the towns around here are sort of born of these natural names, and of course that has been bulldozed and paved over, and that is sort of the way of things. That's how we progress in the world, and that's how we build a civilization. But he's almost expressing some sadness in this poem at sort of the transformation that often leads to, and there's, I think, sometimes a feeling out there as you kind of look out across all of those beige houses in a row, all of them lined up perfectly in a row with very similar layouts, that there's a little bit too much conformity in those communities, and this is true of retirement communities as well. If you're talking about old people, all of those little rooms are basically the same, and there's just a general, just sort of a lack of feeling really inspired by that, and so, but the names tend to sound like there's more going on. That there's going to be quail here. You're close to nature when you're actually farther than nature than you've ever been. Okay, so it comes time for you to meet my dog, and as a way of explanation of this poem, well, I'm just going to show you my dog first, who's actually sleeping. I feel kind of bad because he is sleepy. Can you see him? Here he is. This is Wilbur. He is a French bulldog, blue and brindle, and he's got a little white on his chest. And he's kind of a chewer. He kind of likes to bite things right now, but he's really learning fast. I've been training him really well, and he just learned fetch today, which I'm really proud of. He's finally able to actually complete the whole cycle of going to get the toy and bringing it back and dropping it so that I can give him a treat. So I'm really proud of him. But dogs are man's best friend, right? Like, that's the old adage. When we have dogs, we think of them as our best friends. And when I look at my little dog, I look into his beautiful blue eyes right now, and I look at them, and all I see is love and affection and borderline worship. I mean, my dog looks at me like I am God, like I am awesome, like I am the king, and no one else does that, really. So I think that he loves me. I hope that he loves me. Billy Collins takes that in this poem, The Revenant, and flips it on its head, for the purposes of satire and the purposes of irony. And he imagines a world in which a dog is faking it a little bit, a dog that doesn't actually love you and is only pretending to love you, and actually feels like, nah, I don't really like you that much, but you have a lot of power over my life, so I have to pretend. The Revenant. I am the dog you put to sleep. As you like to call the needle of oblivion, come back to tell you this simple thing. I never liked you. When I licked your face, I thought of biting off your nose. When I watched you toweling yourself dry, I wanted to leap and unman you with a snap. I resented the way you moved, your lack of animal grace, the way you would sit in a chair to eat, a napkin on your lap, knife in your hand. I would have run away, but I was too weak, a trick you taught me while I was learning to sit and heel, and greatest of insults, shake hands without a hand. I admit the sight of the leash would excite me, but only because it meant I was about to smell things you had never touched. You do not want to believe this, but I have no reason to lie. I hated the car, the rubber toys, disliked your friends, and worse, your relatives. The jingling of my tags drove me mad. You always scratched me in the wrong place. All I ever wanted from you was food and fresh water in my metal bowls. While you slept, I watched you breathe. As the moon rose in the sky, it took all of my strength not to raise my head and howl. Now I am free of the collar, the yellow raincoat, monogrammed sweater, the absurdity of your lawn, and that is all you need to know about this place, except what you already supposed and are glad it did not happen sooner, that everyone here can read and write, the dogs in poetry, the cats and all the others in prose. So I don't know how Wilbur feels. He can't really talk, he can't really speak to me, but I hope that he doesn't feel that way, and I think Billy Collins even is a dog person, and I don't think that he actually feels that his dog doesn't like him. But, it's hard to tell with these little guys. And, maybe they are really faking it. Who knows? Maybe Billy Collins is, in the very least, he's recognizing that, there's some satire to be had. There's a joke to be had in that man's best friend paradigm. So, thanks for watching. Just respond in the Google prompt with your reaction to these poems, and let me know what you thought of them.